Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 19 of the project, and a lot of you have been waiting for that. Today we're gonna have a look at smoke and fire. Okay, so this is the usual scene we are starting with, and to demonstrate how to set it up, I'm just gonna create two objects. A cube like that. Okay, and let's start with the sphere, a UV sphere that we're gonna include inside our cube. Okay, so that's the basis of it. For a simulation like smoke and fire, or even fluid simulation, you need a minimum of two objects. One will be this cube. I'm gonna affect it a fluid physics, okay? And now in the type, I can choose domain, and this will represent the area where the simulation is calculated. The simulation can't exist outside of this area. You should make sure it is big enough to include all the simulation, while at the same time being not too big so that it doesn't calculate an area where there is nothing to simulate. Okay, so that's the first element and the main one. And then in domain type, you can choose gas or liquid, because today we are gonna do a smoke and fire. We will choose gas. And then the second object, our sphere, will be our emitter, like for particles. So I'm gonna choose fluid again, and then in type, I'm gonna choose flow. You've got flow type, then that you can change, and you've got smoke, fire plus smoke, fire on its own, or liquid. And today, what we want is fire plus smoke. And now, we've got something that will emit our fire and our smoke, and a domain within which the calculation will take place. What we can do from now on is pressing play on our timeline, and Blender will calculate the simulation. Or will it? In case it doesn't start, something that can be seen as a bit annoying, but we don't have the choice, we need to modify one setting from the domain, and this will reset the simulation. So we can usually move a bit this number here, resolution subdivision, and then it will start. Okay, so at the moment we've got a bit of smoke, and you can see there is a bit of fire at the beginning, but it just stopped very fast. Why is that? To make it work, in the flow parameter, we need to change this flow behavior from geometry to inflow. Now, if we play the animation, now our fire is correct. And this is the easiest way to create smoke and fire, but not really. There is an even easiest way. If I am to hide those objects, okay, I'm gonna just hide the collection, and then create, as I did earlier, a UV sphere here in my scene. I can just go to Object, select Quick Effects, and choose Quick Smoke. This will set my sphere as a flow type and add a box surrounding it, being the domain. Then you can of course change the smoke setting to fire and smoke, and then maybe this a little bit, and now you've got your fire and your smoke. Okay, this way the settings we've done before are already set correctly, and you can have a fire this way. I'm gonna show you a few other settings that might be useful for what we need to do. We've got here the density and the fuel parameters. Let's say I'm gonna animate them. So at frame 0, they're at 1. I'm gonna have them at 1 again at frame 30, but then at frame 35, I'm gonna reduce both to 0. And let's have a look at the simulation now. See, after frame 35, because there is no more fuel, the fire stops. Okay. And another parameter that can also be useful, and it can be found in the domain parameter. If you go a bit below, you've got something called dissolve, and dissolve is the amount of frame after which the gas will disappear, start to dissolve. I'm gonna modify a bit my domain so that we can see this effect better. Let's do a bit of that first. Okay, you can see that the smoke goes all the way to the top of the domain. If now I activate the dissolve parameter and just change that to, let's say, 10. Let's modify that again. We will see that the smoke disappears. Okay? So that's the basics for it. What we might need for our project is something else. I'm gonna add here, just for the sake of the example, let's say a plane. Okay, I'm gonna set it here, maybe. Okay, rotate it a bit. And then add it to the fluid simulation and give it a type Effector. Effector type is set to collision. So this way. And I start my simulation again. So if your object is not thick enough, you need to set the ease planar option or the surface thickness parameter a bit up so that it will take into account your plane or your object. Let's say I use now a cube that I will just scale like that and scale on the z-axis. It has thickness. Okay, let's give it fluid effector type. Okay. Now if we play the animation, you can see the smoke is affected by this cube. Okay? So those are the basics for fire and smoke. Let's use them in our scene and see how it goes. Okay, here is our scene. I have prepared the 7th sequence where you can see the cauldron and the fire happening. So in here I'm gonna add an object, okay, which will be, let's say, why not a sphere? This will be my fire emitter. Okay, I'm gonna scale it this way so it's large emission area. Let's switch to wireframe mode. I'm gonna activate the shortcut now that I think of it. Okay, and let's place that right in the center of our cauldron. Okay. Okay, we've got our fire and smoke emitter. What could be something nice is to also add an effector so that the fire and smoke will not go through the cauldron. I'm gonna first start by going into the menu objects and do quick effect and quick smoke. Okay, this way Blender added a domain here. I'm gonna set this domain to dimension of where the simulation will happen. You don't need anything too big for that. Okay, so let's say we can start here just above the floor, and in terms of dimension we don't really go that high, we go up to, let's say, here. So let's bring it down, and of course you can have several domain and several smoke or effects emitter in your scene at once, because I'm thinking about this because we're gonna have also to set those candles on fire, and for this we can use another domain and other emitters here for the candles. Something I didn't show you previously is that also the effect is affected by forces. Like if you add a wind, you will have your smoke or your fire being affected by the wind. And this is what we will use in this sequence to make the candle light off. Okay, so I think in terms of height it's enough. I'm gonna just set this here, apply the scale to make sure. And now if we wanted to, let's have a look at these parameters. If we play, oh, aha, why isn't it playing? Of course, you've got in here the frame start and frame end for the simulation. At the moment it's set from 1 to 250, and of course we are on frame 2350, so we need to set that up. And now I'm gonna just enter the value like that to 350. Okay, and now this should work. Here you can see the smoke is rising. Okay, and because I used a quick effect, what I can do right now is remove the structure and the objects, so it's a bit not too cluttered, and I can change this from smoke to fire plus smoke. Okay. Okay. Isn't that perfect? Okay, edit. It's a big, huge fire, so we'll have to make sure it's not that big. So for that, let's go to the dissolve parameter. So let's set that to 10. Okay, it goes like that. Let's say for the moment that should be enough. Okay. What we need now is our effector, and I'm gonna use not the actual objects, but usually what we use are simplify objects. This is much more simple than our cauldron, and I'm just gonna give it the same dimensions and the same position of the cauldron, of course, to make it as real as possible. That should be enough. Okay, it has almost the size and the shape of our cauldron. Maybe you've got the ring here that is not the same. What I can do is selecting the cauldron, isolate the selection, and I'm just gonna model this icosphere to fit a bit more the shape of the cauldron. Okay, that way we got something that looks like our cauldron, but it's much more simpler. Okay, let's apply the scale just in case, and now we can make the cauldron not selectable, remove this, add object as an effector, and then select my domain and see how this goes. Look, oh yeah, it goes around the cauldron like that. Okay, so now for a more dramatic effect, I think we can animate the parameters from the domain, or from the fire, in fact, and those were density and fuel. As we saw earlier, density is full, but fuel we can set it up to 5. Let's see what it does if I'm up to 5. Oh, look at that. Spread like, whoo. A lot. So maybe we can have a start like that, just a start, and then have it stop after a little bit of time. Okay, a mix of the two. So let's say it's starting here. I'm gonna set that to 0 for both and add a keyframe. What we want, I think I'm just gonna animate my camera as well and make it go slowly, very slowly toward the cauldron. The timing, I do it whenever I feel like it's the good moment, okay? I have no real secrets or magic to that. I just play the animation and then I feel like it's the moment when the fire should go off. So that's what I decided. So now it's animated at 0, but why is there still a fire? It's because we haven't changed the domain parameters to reset the simulation. So that's why it's still here, but don't worry. It's still animated. So now I'm gonna add again the frame at 0, but next frame, a few frames after, I'm gonna set that to 1, and these two, let's set 3, not 5. Okay, just a bit. If I want to duplicate the keys, I can, using Shift D on my keyboard. I think I already told you that. And over here, I can have still the 1 parameter here, but a parameter at 1 here. And I just add keys to both. And so now, if I go to my domain and reset that, see there is no fire at the beginning, and then suddenly, the fire lights up. Okay, maybe it could be a bit bigger. Okay, so this is the flame rate, so fuel. I think I can set it up. Here it's at 3 and it goes back to 1. Let's say I change those keys. I'm just gonna hide the other curve. Let's say I move those keys a bit up, like that. So it's now around 3, let's say 4. Okay. 4.5, and then it stays at 2.5. Let's see if it's dramatic enough. Okay, I like the start, but I think the end is just too much. Okay, so let's move that down. I'm gonna set my, let's say 1.4, and have a look. As usual, this needs a lot of tweaking. Yes, I think that's okay. Just maybe a bit less, slightly less. Okay, like that. And we will be okay for our fire. Okay, that's great. So now, one last thing I need to tell you about the fire. Let's say we change this viewport setting to rendered. Okay, and at the moment, we don't see much. We see, we can guess there is smoke here at the bottom. Okay, and if I go a bit further, we will see maybe more of it, but why isn't there any fire? That's because by default. Our fire has a material, but the material is set in the domain, so you need to select the domain. And now I'm gonna switch to the shader editor and have a look at what it is like. Instead of what we used to have, the principal VSDF, we have a node which is called principal volume, and it is plugged to the volume output of the material and not the surface. So this means that before we add an object, we would see what's at the surface of the object, okay? The material we used to do, like wood or metal. But this is smoke, so it's not a surface, but we can at the same time see through, but the material is really what's inside, so in the volume of the object. So that's why we use a principal volume and the volume output of our material. And now you can see here the smoke, we have a few parameters, the color of the smoke that we can change. So now this is a red smoke. Okay, I don't really want it to be red, of course. The density of it, if I increase it, you can see there's a lot more density, so we can see it much more. Anisotropy is the parameter that will let light being seen more or less within the smoke. Meaning that if I add a light here, where the smoke is, and I increase the anisotropy parameter, we will see the light inside the smoke. Okay? And now, for the fire, in fact, the fire color is controlled by the black body intensity. So if I increase this, we'll see now, there is our fire. Okay? This is our fire. I can use emission strength parameter if this was emitting light, but of course it doesn't emit light, but I can change the black body tint to be something different. Okay, if I wanted this to change its color, the fire, but that again I don't want, at least not this way. Okay, so this is what it looks like at the moment, but of course this doesn't look at all like fire. So these settings, like a few other settings in Blender, looks like it just can go up to 1, but if you click on it and enter a value manually, you can go up to something like 50, and this looks much more like fire. Okay, much more like fire, like that. And now we've got our results. There is something we can do to make it look even better, is to add an input node and select here volume info. And this will give us a few parameters that are based off of the volume here, so the smoke and fire effect. We've got a color, a density, a flame, and a temperature parameters. The temperature we've seen here, it is in our emitter. We've got here initial temperature, and this we won't change now. Okay, so this parameter we don't need. The flame will give us a parameter that is like the flame part separated from the smoke. Okay, and the density, this is what we want to use, because this change the denser area is where the flames are, not where the smoke is. Okay, so we can use this parameter and make it go through a color ramp, as we used to do. You can see that using those sliders, you can affect the flame area. At the moment, you remember this is black and white, so the highest value is only 1. So we are back to our first scenario, where this wasn't strong enough. We can add a converter and a math node, and set this to multiply. So I'm going to multiply this by 50. So now we've got something similar to what we had before, but I have control over the way the flame looks like. And if I were to add something in the middle, maybe I can have something interesting, and I have something white here and something, let's say, black here. Okay, so at the moment, see, we have something that it's kind of look like a flame because you've got a pattern in the flame area as well. I can maybe add another one and give it something either white, if we want the base to be white, or maybe a bit grayish. Okay, and look at the pattern in our flames. They look much more alive and flame-like, let's say. Okay, and this as well you can change if you want them to be really, really strong. Change this value, let's say 1000, and look at how they will be like. Okay, maybe this we can animate as well, meaning that would be great, I think. At the beginning when it just bursts at 1000. Okay, so let's add a key to it. If I place my mouse over this value and hit the I key, then I've added a key in here. What I can do now, just go a few frames after, change its value to, let's say, 100, and then press I again. Okay, so now it's just bursting like that, and then change its value after a point. Okay, I'm gonna change those. Okay, looks nice to me. Okay, that's great, and we've done our fire. Of course, we might need to add maybe a box with the shape of the chimney so that the smoke doesn't go through the wood beam nor the walls. That would be interesting and nice to do. Okay, but now we've got the basis of our flame in this sequence. I will let you tweak it the way you want, of course, because this project also belongs to you. And I hope this was helpful and you are again still as excited as me to see this project come to completion. And so have fun playing with the smoke and fire, and don't burn too much things. I'll see you in the next part where we will talk about liquid simulations. Have a good day everyone. Bye.